morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at a pair of new Aegislash, and we do have to look at them as a pair. They don't really... we could look at them individually, but I think we'd be losing a lot. I like to give cards room to breathe. I like to give them a bit of their own attention, but unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think this is going to be the case here. So what we've got is a pair of Aegislash, and stats-wise, they look pretty gosh darn similar. 150 HP is high, but for a stage 2, it's really not that high. Retreat cost of 3 is kind of awkward, because it means you don't get Air Balloon, which is honestly a little bit sad. Resistance to grass is nice. If grass decks ever become good, still waiting on Rillaboom. And weakness to fire is not ideal because Center Scorch is amazing and Welder makes pretty much any fire deck good right now. Having said that, post-rotation when Welder goes away, which admittedly is like 7.5 months from now, but that's not the point, maybe. And being a metal Pokemon gives you all kinds of tricks. You got Metal Saucer to accelerate extra energy, Metal Goggles to reduce damage done to you, although you are basically hitting nothing relevant for weakness, Boo Hiss, etc. But what do they actually do? Well, the reason we have to look at them together is because they both have the same ability, and it's an ability that we've totally seen before. Stance Change. Shout out to the lovely TuNu1223 for hooking us up with the translations here. I haven't used TuNu1223 for a little while. Having said that, I've just checked, and the lovely Antoine Boulet has also gone and posted the translations here. So shout out to the pair of those lovely people for hooking us up. But the ability is Stance Change. It's got the same name as it did back in the X and Y era. And it does the same thing as it did back in the X and Y. I say X and Y era, I mean X and Y base set. They were, in fact, the first 2 Aegislash we ever had. Once during your turn, you may switch this Pokemon with an Aegislash in your hand. Any cards attached to the Pokemon, damage counters, special conditions, turns in play, and other effects remain on the new Pokemon. So you don't get to escape special conditions this way or get rid of damage, but you do get to keep all of the energy, etc., which you would want to keep anyway. So I don't know, call it a draw, ladies and gentlemen, call it a draw. But essentially what this allows you to do is mix and match attacks. Now what was really cool about the old Aegislash was that the shield had King's Shield, which prevented all damage to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn, but you couldn't use it next turn, etc., etc., so you would switch into the Sword, and then you would do 120 for 4 energy, and essentially round and round we go. That's basically what we're going for here. Weirdly enough, we had those first 2 Aegislash with Stance Change, and this is the first time we've seen this ability since. It does bear repeating that obviously in the expanded format, all 4 of these will be legal, so you'll literally be able to play 1 of each. Remember, only 4 Aegislash in your deck, but you will be able to essentially play 1 of each, and then switch between them at will, which sounds kind of cool. But it's all about options here. That is what this ability gives you. Now, what would be really cool is if we could buck the trend of last time and have more of these Aegislash in the future. Remember, Aegislash can come through as either a metal or a psychic Pokemon. I'm still upset the one from Unified Minds just never ended up being good enough. Boo, etc. Interestingly enough, we do have ones from Team Up and Unified Minds, which will be legal for this is coming out in March and rotating in kind of August, September, so you're talking about 5 months, 5.5 months, so we'll talk about them in a moment. There is one that will survive the rotation, we'll get there as well. But what are the attacks? Well, the attacks are so much better than in the X and Y base set. So we've got the Sword Aegislash. This is, of course, the attacking one. It's a sword. And for 3 energy, you do 210 damage, but you have to discard 2 metal energy from this Pokemon. But first of all, the other Aegislash has a 2 energy attack, we'll get there in a minute. And secondly, you've got Metal Saucer. Metal Saucer is going to help you to get the energy on. Now, outside of Metal Saucer, it's a little awkward. I mean, you can use stuff like Turbo Patch, but You know, you got to get that onto your Hon Edge before you evolve up, and it's doable. Don't get me wrong, it's doable, but it is, shall we say, a little bit awkward. Now, it is 2 metal energy that have to be discarded, which sucks, because it means you can't play around with stuff like twin energy or triple acceleration energy, which is mean. It does mean you've got to keep putting metal energy on there. And it does mean that after a couple of Metal Saucer, you are going to potentially run out of energy here. I mean, 210 damage is a lot. 210 damage, you will be getting pretty much any single prize Pokemon. And in terms of Pokemon V, you'll be getting a bunch of them as well. Centiskorch V will be KO'd by this. And of course, your weaker ones, your Crobat, etc., that people are going to be using in an awful lot of decks will go down here. There are actually a few too many for my liking with 220. Colossal, Eternatus, both sitting there with 220. And you can use a Vitality Band to get up there, and you can use a Galarian Zigzagoon, but it's just adding more awkwardness to what is already free energy on a Stage 2 Pokemon. Now, of course, it's worth noting this is only 20 less damage than Zacian actually does, which is really good, for the same cost, essentially. Although Zacian doesn't have to discard energy. It can't attack next turn, but you can reset that easily enough, to be honest with you. So it is quite a nice attacker in that regard. I should mention with Zacian, although it's kind of awkward, remember that Zacian's ability can attach energy to itself, so if you're playing around with that and then do a bit of energy switch, maybe attack with Zacian, your opponent hits but doesn't KO, and then you just energy switch over to Aegislash. It's awkward, but it can work. It's not too bad. And you are a little bit shy of some of these things, but don't forget we've got Berserker here. Lets all of your metal Pokemon do an extra 20 damage, which sounds pretty good. So you know what? You can get up some really nice numbers here. The discarding energy is going to be paying it after a couple of attacks, but until then, this is going to be nice. As for the Shield Aegislash here, what do we get? 2 energy, 70 damage during your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon VMAX. This is awesome. But it's not going to work against every deck. And that's a bit of a problem here. Now, what I really want to say here is, look, well, the Aegislash, the sword, is really good. Lots of damage, discard 2 energy. But this has a 2 energy attack, and there's an ability that lets you switch into it. So, switch into this one. Remember, the Aegislash has got to be in your hand. Switch into this one. And then you get to have a 2 energy attack. Now, to be fair, that 2 energy attack might be enough. Like, you hit 210 with the first Aegislash, switch into this, hit 70, that's 280. Even if you're not playing around with stuff like Vitality Band, Berserker, etc., 280 is enough to get pretty much any tag team. You know, ADP will go down. There are a few that are slightly higher, but they're not terribly relevant. I know Birdsee's a bit of play, but you know what I mean? They're not terribly relevant. So actually, even though this 70 damage is low, it kind of works. Hit with a sword for 210, switch to the shield, assuming it's in your hand, that's up to you. You only need to attach 1 more energy, then you got 2 on there and you do 70, bring them up to 280, get a KO. And then if you're not knocked out by the next turn, you switch back to the sword, attach a 3rd energy, and off you go. Obviously, when you start switching between them, you'll be fine, but do remember that your opponent can use either Marnie or Reset Stamp here to make you shuffle your hand into and put it on the bottom of your deck, and then you won't have access to those Pokemon unless you draw into them off the Marnie or Reset Stamp, so Reset Stamp goes into your deck, Marnie onto the bottom. It's not ideal, but it could work, you never know. You might get around it. You'll be playing a bunch of these. And do remember, of course, that because they're both called Aegislash, you can only play 2 of them. So if your opponent, say, does put 1 to the bottom of your deck with Marnie, finding your other one and there's only going to be 1 of them, it is going to be very, very awkward. But I do like this as a hit 210, hit 70, hit 210, hit 70. You won't be getting all the VMAXs, which is awkward. But having said that, if you only need to attach from the hand while you're switching between these, you can be using maybe Metal Saucer to build a second one up on the bench. As for blocking VMAXs, we've seen this with Zamazenta. Zamazenta has an ability that blocks VMAXs, and Zamazenta's won a whole bunch of games. Here's the thing. Zamazenta has 230 HP, may well have used Lucario and Melmetal's GX attack to reduce damage, and will almost always have a Metal Goggles on to reduce damage, meaning you're not being KO'd. But what about, let's take Eternatus V as an example. Eternatus V just has nothing against Zamazenta, because they do 120, they're not 2-hit KOing you, but you're easily 2-hit KOing them. Problem is, if I'm Aegislash against Eternatus, I'm not 3-hit KOing them without some kind of damage manipulation, but they are easily 2-hit KOing me. But this goes back to the switching. I'm not hitting 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, 70. I'm hitting 7210, 7210, 7210, etc. So, against an Eternatus V, I hit them for 70, and either they VMAX and they can't attack me, I'm immune, or they don't VMAX, I switch into the sword and get a KO. I am not attacking once with each Aegislash and KOing a VMAX, but I don't have to, because once I attack with the shield, either they VMAX and I'm immune, or they don't VMAX and then they are in range of the sword. It's going to be an awkward combo to pull off, and you really do need to switch between them, which is why this video had to look at both of them at once. But if you do switch between them, this can be good. I'm worried that the HP is a little bit too low. I'm worried that the energy cost on the sword is a bit too high, and then you've got to discard 2 of them. But I think the pair of them combined can basically KO anything other than a VMAX. But you're not worried about VMAXs because you just start attacking with a shield, and either you're immune to VMAXs, or they bring in something that isn't a VMAX, and most evolving Vs cannot KO you in one hit. And then you're off and rolling. I think it's awkward, but I really like the pair of these. I'm giving them as a pair between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. I want to score them higher, but they are multi-energy stage 2s, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Oh, actually, right before we finish, I said I'd mention the other Aegislash and I never did, which is a little bit rude. So very quickly, we have got the one that came around in Team Up, which will not survive the rotation. This Pokemon takes 40 less damage from attacks, and free energy, 100, not affected by any effects on your opponent's active. It's nice if there's a specific Pokemon which is trying to block you, but there's nothing really in the format at the moment which is trying to block a single prize stage 2, so no. We got the one from Unified Minds that I really like that does 10 damage for each trainer card or item card in your discard pile up to 130 for a single energy. Love the single energy attack. Love that if it gets KO'd by damage from an attack, it goes into your hand, which will allow you to then recover the Honedge and the Doublade as well, which is awesome. But I'm afraid I don't know if you're going to make space for it given how good it is switching between the two we've got. But I do like this one. And then the one from Rebel Clash, which will survive the rotation. Terrible attack, free energy 130, no. But all of your Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks, though it doesn't stack. Could give you some extra survivability. But again, I just go right back to my previous point of, are you going to go away from a 2-2 split of the new Aegislash to play this? I don't think you are. And while we're talking about other Aegislash, there is one other card I should probably mention that I haven't yet, sorry. It is Duskstone. And Duskstone basically lets you evolve from a Doublade right up into an Aegislash. Lets you kind of cheat evolution. Should be mentioned, it also lets you search for the Aegislash. So you don't have to have it in your hand or anything like that. You can just play it and off you go. Which is kind of ridiculous. So if you want yourself a little bit of extra speed and consistency, Duskstone, as if you're playing like a proper Aegislash deck, definitely got your back. But if you can get this rolling, and you can be switching between them, anything tag team and down, you're KOing with one attack from each, and the only thing left is VMAXs that you're either immune to, or they don't play them, so it doesn't matter. These could be fun. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, well, you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.